Names. Hi, everybody. Welcome to EduSmart Professional Development Series, our Wednesday edition today. Thank you all again for joining us after your long, busy day. We're very excited to have you. So warm welcome from all of us here on the EduSmart team. Today is going to be one of the most adorable and fun professional development sessions. Lisa and I did a dry run earlier, and there were multiple times I was like, oh, my heart. So you're definitely going to enjoy today's session. So my name is Devanshi, and I'm joined here by our EduSmart team. We have Mark and Arlene, and I will be monitoring the chat today. So please use that chat to its fullest extent, and at the end we will have a Q&A, so you can ask your questions to Mark, Arlene, and Lisa about anything that's on your mind about EduSmart or whatever you've seen here today. This webinar is very interactive, and so I've emailed most of you parts and bits that you will need if you want to participate in that section of the webinar. I'll also put all of the information in our chat very soon. So I'm really hyped. So without further ado, let's hype up our lady of the hour. So Lisa is the new Director of Curriculum and Professional Development here at EduSmart. Lisa is known for offering challenging, creative, hands-on science educator workshops. She has 34 years of experience in science education with over 25 years of presenting different sessions and workshops for science teachers. Before she joined EduSmart, she was working as a classroom teacher, a department chair, an online certification teacher, virtual school curriculum designer, independent science consultant, and the science curriculum director. So please give your warmest round of applause to Lisa.
Okay, thank you, Devanshi, and thank you all for coming. I know it seems like the closer it gets to the end of the year, the more difficult it is to add something extra to your plate. So thank you very much for coming. What we're going to talk about today is one of my favorite things to do, which is tell science with stories. And so what we're going to do here today is look at pairing a fiction book with a nonfiction text to help kids understand science even better than they would without this. And so what this can do by pairing fiction and nonfiction books, it makes it more engaging for the kids, especially if it's a really cute story like we're going to talk about today. And it's a great way to build vocabulary because kids may see the same words in a different genre. And so that repetition of vocabulary words is helpful. Or maybe one of the books uses a different word than the other book. And that also, of course, helps enrich their vocabulary skills. So why read in science class? Why not do this just in reading? Reading allows purposeful instruction and vocabulary. And one of the things you can also do when you read a fiction book is it brings up wider varieties of everyday vocabulary words. So just for example, from the book we're reading today, I circled the word meadow. This may not be a common vocabulary word for most kids, but then you can stop and talk about what does this word mean? And building that background knowledge is important because a lot of times when the kids get older and take a standardized test, a lot of times they get tripped up by the content words that are not science words, and they don't know what they mean. And so they tend to sort of give up on the question. I remember a fifth grade science question here in Texas that asked the kids something about cement. And a lot of places here in Texas, you don't say cement, you say concrete. And so they were just lost because they didn't know sort of those everyday vocabulary words. And so reading fiction books in science class will help with that. And I pulled this quote from our past president of NSTA, National Science Teaching Association, that studies show that scientists spend 60 to 70% of their time reading, writing, and communicating. And so when kids are reading, writing, and communicating, they are doing science. And another thing that pairing fiction and nonfiction can do is help sort of facilitate deeper discussion and broaden their perspective about content and themes. And in science, we call these cross-cutting concepts, and they help link science across different domains. And so using fiction books to help understand big ideas like this can help lower the abstract nature of science. So we have 7 cross-cutting concepts in science, and these 6 are ones that we can address with the books that we're going to read today. So in the back of your mind, sort of keep in mind, where are you seeing patterns or an example of cause and effect, or scale, proportion, and quantity, systems and models, structure and function, and stability and change, because all of those things or themes are going to come across in the books that we're reading today. And also by combining texts of different genres, it can help to promote language and literacy development of English language learners. So if you read the book in English and you have the nonfiction book in Spanish, like we offer in EduSmart, it can help them understand some of those English words because they had the Spanish context in the nonfiction text. And I listed just one of the many sort of academic background articles that I read to be able to make that claim on the slide. It's not just me. And so our theme for today is going to be life cycles of butterflies. So there are 2 non-fiction books you could use. We're going to stick with the Gotta Go. But you could also read a book called Hurry and the Monarch, which is based in Texas, and it uses cities like Wichita Falls that may sound familiar to the kiddos that are here in Texas. And I'm going to pair it with a nonfiction text called Life Cycles of Butterflies. This is found at grade 2 in both our Texas and Florida versions. And if you're not an EduSmart customer, I don't think it's going to be super hard to find a nonfiction book about butterfly life cycles if you don't have access to this one. And of course, all of our materials, readers, are available in English and Spanish. So rather than sort of violate copyright law and take pictures of the book, I'm just going to link to someone reading this book on YouTube, which is also not exactly copyright friendly, but it's not me breaking the law, I suppose. And so the best thing to do is to buy the book. They have it on Amazon. It was like $5.99. And if you're going to use this as part of your lesson every year, it's probably worth the expense of getting it or asking your librarian to buy it for the school library, and you can check it out when you want to read it. So we're going to watch someone else read the book. Super cute story here. Devonchi, give me a thumbs up if the sound's coming through so I know.
Not yet, Lisa. I think we're going to have to change the sound source.
Okay, I have to unmute it. So hold on. I had to unmute. That was me.
She was all alone.
Okay, sorry, let me back up a little bit more.
You tiny, creepy, crawly bug. She was all alone. The creepy, crawly bug held up her head, looked out at the beautiful meadow, and said, I don't know much, but I know what I know. I gotta go, I gotta go. I gotta go to Mexico. And she creepy crawled away just as fast as she could. She ate and she crawled.
Whoops, sorry. Oh my gosh. I clicked on something else on my screen.
Tiny, creepy, all alone. The creepy crawly bug held up her head, looked out at the beautiful meadow, and said, I don't know much, but I know what I know. I gotta go, I gotta go. I gotta go to Mexico. And she creepy crawled away just as fast as she could. She ate and she crawled and she ate. She ate so much, she crawled right out of her skin. I gotta go, I gotta go. I gotta go to Mexico. Along the way, she met a grasshopper who said, Where are you going, creepy crawly bug? Mexico, Mexico. I gotta go to Mexico. Mexico, said the grasshopper. What on earth is Mexico? I have no idea, said the creepy crawly bug. But if Mexico is where I'm going, and it is, then Mexico will be wherever I get. and she creepy crawled away as fast as she could go. Next, she met an ant who said, "Where are you going, creepy crawly bug?" "Mexico, Mexico, I gotta go to Mexico." "Mexico," said the ant. "Never heard of it. How will you get to Mexico?" "I have no idea," said the creepy crawly bug, "but if Mexico is where I'm going, and it is, then however I go, I will get there." And she creepy crawled away just as fast as she could go. After she had creepy crawled a very long time, the creepy crawly bug was still in a beautiful meadow, and Mexico was nowhere in sight. "Oh my, 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 my," she sighed. "Knowing what you know is sometimes very hard." She was so tired she couldn't creepy crawl another inch. So she made herself a bed, tucked herself in tight, and said, "After a nice long rest, I'm sure I'll feel like a brand new creepy crawly bug." For days she slept, and days, hidden from the world. Her sleep was long and hard and very strange. When it was time, she woke. She woke and found she had indeed a brand new creepy crawly bug. She was a brand new creepy crawly bug with wings. They were orange and black and splendid. She lifted her head, looked out at the beautiful meadow and said, "I gotta go, I gotta go. I gotta go to Mexico." And off she flew just as fast as she could go. Along the way, she met a bird who said, "Where are you going, creepy crawly bug with wings?" "Mexico, Mexico, I gotta go to Mexico." "Mexico is thousands of miles from here. A teeny tiny bug like you will never make it." But the creepy crawly bug said, "I am what I am, and I know what I know. And make it or not, I gotta go, I gotta go. I gotta go to Mexico." And off she flew just as fast as she could go. She flew over farms and highways, cities and towns, forests and rivers. For days she flew, and days, all on her own, and only knowing what she knew. But still she flew, and still she cried, "Mexico, Mexico, I gotta go to Mexico." Her journey was long and hard and full of dangers. At last she came to a valley. Far below she saw millions of bugs just like her. They covered the trees, changing the green to orange. She drifted down and joined them. All but one was fast asleep. "Hello," she said. "Hello," he said. "Welcome to Mexico." "I am so glad to be here," she said, and she fell asleep. Winter came, and the creepy crawly bugs slept and slept. In the spring, the sun woke them. "Good morning, good morning. Will you dance with me?" "Why, yes, thank you. I'd love to." Two by two, the creepy crawly bugs flew into the sky and danced, changing the blue to orange. When the dance was done, the creepy crawly bug turned her head toward home and said, "I gotta go, I gotta go. Goodbye." And away again she flew. She flew over rivers and forests, towns and cities, highways and farms. For days she flew, and days all on her own, and only knowing what she knew. At last she came to a meadow. She fluttered for a while, looking for the one leaf that would do, and landed lightly, laid the first of many eggs. It was the reason for everything. And when it was time, out of the egg came a teeny tiny, creepy crawly bug.
So super cute book. And next I'm going to take you to the EduSmart reader that has our nonfiction book, Life Cycles of Butterflies. Those of you not familiar with EduSmart, I'm not going to go over all of the tools, but basically you can have this read aloud to the student can choose to have it read aloud to them. You can increase the size of the font. You can change the speed of the text. You can change the background color, anything, to help the kids able to access and read this a little bit easier. And so these are highly visual and of course grade level appropriate. So this is really targeted for second graders. And it says, what are these objects? They look like tiny beads. Did someone's bracelet break? No, they're insect eggs and they're butterfly eggs. A butterfly is an insect. An insect is a special kind of bug. And when these eggs hatch, the insects that crawl out won't look like butterflies. Why won't they look like butterflies? And so if the teacher is reading it to a group like I'm doing to you, this lets you stop and get some feedback from the kids on what they think the answer might be. And there's caption, these little eggs look like pearls. They don't hold butterflies. So how can a butterfly egg not contain a butterfly? Some baby insects look like their parents and others do not. Most insects hatch from eggs, and the adult butterfly lays her eggs on plants. The plant helps her young survive. The female insect lays eggs and the baby insect will hatch from the egg. The plant will supply food for the young insect, and the plant will also help it get water. There's water inside the plant, and when the young insect eats the plant, it will get water. But what comes out of the butterfly egg if not a butterfly? Butterfly larvae come out of the eggs, and we call them caterpillars. Caterpillars will mature, they will eat and grow. Do you see where they ate the leaf? During their life cycles, they will go through another change. In the next change, these young caterpillars will form a pupa, and this pupa is called a chrysalis. They hang from trees, and after that, the caterpillars will become butterflies. It's hard to believe. A butterfly's life cycle is not like yours. When it's young, it looks a certain way, and during its life, it undergoes a large change. And this change takes place in 4 steps. First is the egg. Next is the larva called a caterpillar. Then the caterpillar forms a pupa or chrysalis. And lastly, a butterfly that looks like its parent emerges. This kind of change is called metamorphosis. And you may remember that they didn't use the term chrysalis in the book. They talked about it was asleep and it was very long and very strange. And so you may want to bring that back when you're talking about the science vocabulary to link it back to the book about gotta go, gotta go. So animals are different from insects and people are different from insects. Think about how young animals look, or even these young plants here, these mangroves. Humans, horses, and whales give live birth and their babies look like small versions of adults. Some insects do not look like small versions of the adult. They go through stages in their life cycle that makes them look different. Plants are small versions of larger plants and plants grow from seeds. Can you think of other examples? And then at the end of all of our readers, if you assign this as independent reading, the kids can sort of take a little short quiz, usually 4 or 5 questions, and you can track their answers and see how many chose the correct answer. It's just like a short formative assessment. And so some are true and false, some are multiple choice, and then there's a short answer that they can do. And when the kids click finish quiz, then of course you can see how they did on that. So I'm going to go back to our presentation here. And one more thing that we do inside EduSmart is there's vocabulary development activities for kids to do. And so you can ask them, what do you remember about vocabulary words from the paired books? And I just took a screenshot of this interactive vocabulary activity where the kids can press and then drag and drop the correct answer at the bottom. And if they drag and drop the wrong one, it will alert and tell them, to try again, to try to get the correct answer. And you can also track their correct and incorrect answers on this activity. But that's not the only connection you can do. Of course, you can talk about what's the difference between a story and the truth. That informational nonfiction text always tells you about something that's true, and what's in the fictional story may not always be true. So it's always good to either have them point out as a class or independently what parts of the story were fictional. You know, do butterflies and birds really talk? What's factual? That monarchs migrate to Mexico, that monarchs undergo that metamorphosis, that they lay their eggs on a leaf. There's lots of factual things that's in the book. And that's one of the benefits of pairing that fictional story is kids will notice that if you go back and look at that fiction story again, that it has true facts woven within it, even though some of the things are not true, like talking animals. And next, because one of the things that's close to my heart is addressing student misconceptions. And so when we talk about life cycles with younger students, like the K-2 students that this workshop is designed for, when you ask them to explain this pattern, this model, they sometimes have misconceptions. That this life cycle looks like a circle, and we have the egg to the pupa to the larva to the pupa to the adult. And this is the problematic area. We have this arrow going from the adult back to the egg. And maybe not so much second graders, but definitely kindergartners will tell you that the adult turns back into an egg. They don't understand that every trip around this life cycle is a new generation. And so that's what our hands-on activity is going to address today. And so if you showed them these two pictures side by side, they may tell you that they're not showing the same thing. They may understand that this is a life cycle because you've told them that. But if you look at this picture, which shows the eggs on a leaf, the growing caterpillars, formation and then exit from the chrysalis into the adult, they don't see that these are models of the same exact process. And so that's where the problem is. And I'm not an expert in testing in Florida yet. Florida is sort of new to my wheelhouse. But when we test this in Texas at 5th grade, we test this 3rd grade sort of student expectation. And they have done poorly on 2/3 of the questions asked about life cycles. So even though it may seem that this is something that should be easy for them to grasp, they have trouble with the concept. And it may have to be rooted in the idea that there can be some misconceptions. So this is the part where we're going to do hands-on. So feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question here, or if I'm going too fast. It's hard to do hands-on virtually, but we're going to give it a try. And so Devanshi had asked you to bring 2 paper plates, a stapler or some glue, and a pair of scissors for today. And she also sent you the printout of 2 different sets of life cycles for the butterfly. And so we're going to make a different kind of life cycle model. This one's going to be a 3-dimensional model, and it's going to illustrate to them that a life cycle does not travel in a circle. So we're actually going to make something I like to call a life spiral. And the first thing you need to do is to cut out the center of 2 paper plates. Let me make this bigger so I can see if people have questions. So you can cut through both of them at once. Just make a cut and then cut the center out of 2 paper plates. I can't quite see everybody, but I'm gonna try to hold on here until I at least see one person who has got this cut. So not everyone has their camera on, but enough of you do that I can see what's going on. And so you're going to end up with what's pictured here. Sort of take it apart and you have 2 circular paper plates with a section cut through to the center on both of them. Oh, Devanshi's done. I'll wait for one of our teachers to get done before I move on. Okay, good. Kelly's got hers done. So you will be getting a copy of the slide deck. So if we do move a little too fast for you today, I'm hoping that we don't, but if for some reason we do, you'll be able to get caught up, I promise. that it's not that difficult to do. It's just I'm worried about going too fast virtually. And then you got a single sheet of paper with 2 different life cycles on it, and you're going to have to cut around every single image. One set is for one plate and one set is for the second plate. I've sort of got mine already glued. My color printer wouldn't work today, so mine are black and white, but I think Devanshi also said it would save time if you cut these out in advance, but you may not have seen that part of the email. So rather than stay on this slide, which just tells you to cut out the pictures, I'm going to go to this slide showing what you need to do with each of those images. So if you've got your stapler, you can just staple those pictures on there. If you've got some glue or tape, you can glue or tape them down. The one thing I will caution you is don't glue right up against the cut. Actually leave a little more space than I did on this one. See how much space I have between the dancing butterflies and the cut. Try to leave about that same gap over here because we're going to overlap the plates and you don't want to cover up one of the pictures. So these 2 life cycles are going to be our 2 generations, and it will definitely help some of these kids understand that an adult butterfly does not turn back into an egg. And I also added an extra image here, which I guess you could take off if you didn't want to talk about butterflies dancing before they lay eggs, because really you have to have more than one parent before, a single butterfly cannot, well, I guess the females lay the eggs, but you have to have 2 parents to have new butterflies. And I love the way that they addressed it in the Gotta Go book, that they were dancing. So I added the image of the dancing butterflies. Just to show there's a butterfly mom and a butterfly dad. And feel free to jump in with audio if you have a question or comment while we're waiting for everyone to sort of get to this point. But starting with a fiction book is actually my favorite way to introduce a lesson. I have a whole series of workshops I've done for K2 teachers that I called Start with a Story. And I have a ton of resources I'm going to share with you, or Devanshi will send out tomorrow, probably. And I'll give you a little taste of what that is before I let you leave today. But what I've done for both Texas and for Florida science standards for K2 is after each sort of student expectation or group student expectation, I've listed a bunch of books that you could use to introduce a topic that's in the standard. And so hopefully you can find these at your school library or somewhere. You certainly don't have time to read them all, but hopefully you could maybe find one of them that you could use to introduce the lesson. And I'm bringing that up because I used to get all these ideas from reading to my own daughter, but she's 19 now and she doesn't ask me to read children's books to her very often. So you read a lot more books than I do. So if you have a really good book that can help teach science, just let me know and I'll add it to the list. I will have to say when I got a copy, another copy of the book for today, the Gotta Go, she saw it when I opened it, when it came in the mail, because I couldn't find the copy I had when she was a kid, because it was one that I read over and over and over. And when she saw it come in the mail, she wanted me to read it to her again. So that's the power of stories. That was a wonderful childhood memory for her, hearing me read that book. And so she wanted me to read it again. So that was always my clue that it was a really good story. If someone wanted you to repeat it, oh, look, Devanshi's all ready to go. So again, I'm going to wait for one more person. I know this is the tedious part, but this is such a good model. And having it be 3D makes it easier for kids to understand than a flat, 2-dimensional picture.
I don't mean to brag, but my stapling skills are quite awesome.
Yeah, stapling makes it go a lot faster than trying to glue. So, oh yay!
Wow.
Okay, so Bernadette has hers done. So this is the only tricky part of the whole entire process, which is how do we hook plate 1 to plate 2 here? And so what you got to do to make a spiral is hold one of the plates and hold the egg on a leaf. That's the beginning. And so the other end of your plate is the dancing butterflies, and it's sort of dangling down when you hold it up. And you want to hook the dancing butterflies on one plate to the egg on a leaf of the second plate. And so some people are 3-dimensionally challenged. I understand that. And so what you want to do is you want the plates to be spiraling in the same direction. And where they overlap, just grab a grab a stapler and just staple it together. Or if you have tape, you can tape it. If you have glue, you can glue it. But still, when you're done, you have a spiral model here that when you let it go, it lays down flat with one plate on top of the other. And so it makes it easier for students to see. We're starting with an egg on a leaf that eats the leaf and gets bigger and bigger, starts to make this chrysalis. It has this very strange sleeve. And when the creepy crawly bug comes out, it has wings. And once it makes it to Mexico, it dances with other butterflies and eventually will lay an egg on a different leaf that grows into a different butterfly. Yeah, Bernadette's got hers hooked together. Yeah, it looks good. And so it should be clear that the adult does not turn back into an egg and that every egg belongs to a different generation. That I think having this 3D model of that 2D life cycle picture is really helpful. So again, I'm going to move past this since it looks like everyone who's got their camera on is holding it up and it's complete, so that's good. But again, you're going to get a copy of the slide deck and my email. If you have trouble, I can sort of give you a tutorial over the phone if we need to. we'll do FaceTime. And so let's go back and think about these big cross-cutting themes and big ideas that were in both of these stories. What did you see that had something to do with patterns? Someone wants to unmute themselves and join in here. So it's not just me talking. What kind of patterns did we see? I know you saw a pattern. There's actually more than one, so let's think. Someone want to jump in? Okay.
Hey, Lisa, there were patterns in the rhymes.
There were patterns in the rhymes. That repetition, I think, was helpful. Good. Yeah, exactly. There were patterns in the rhymes for the Gotta Go book. Where else do we see a pattern that was repeating? Let's see. The life cycle stages go around once and then go around again when we did this. It's a little bit hard to tell from the book, but the pattern of going down to Mexico, coming back, and laying eggs, going down to Mexico. It implied that because the book ended with the same page that the book started with. So that was another pattern. What about a cause and effect? This could be implied because you know more about life cycles than most kindergartners do. Anyone know why monarchs decide just to leave and go to Mexico? Why they don't just stay in Minnesota?
Because of the weather patterns?
Because of the weather patterns. It really probably has a lot to do with the amount of available daylight. When the amount of daylight gets shorter, somehow this triggers them to go. And the same true when winter is over in Mexico, they come back.
Their migration pattern as well.
Right, their migration pattern. Scale, proportion, and quantity is you have to dig a little deeper for this, but you can always point out, especially the nonfiction EduSmart reader had very detailed photos, and you could see how tiny the eggs were compared to how big the adults were. And so you can look at those size comparisons, which is bigger, which is smaller, that's, you know, kindergarten level, looking at those kind of things. And for systems and models, that one should be pretty clear. We saw two different models of a life cycle, right? We saw the two-dimensional one that looked like a circle. We saw the two-dimensional one that looked like a progression over time. And then you have a three-dimensional model that all show exactly the same thing. And so showing students more than one model of the same process is always helpful. So they can see it's the same thing and they get the bigger idea. What about structure and function? Okay. Do you think butterflies have wings for a reason? You may have to ask leading questions like that to your little ones for them to be able to see this. What do you think caterpillars have so that they eat those leaves? Do you think they have some body parts that allow them to eat a leaf? They probably have big, oh, I know they do. They have big chewing parts. And you may even find a picture close-up of a caterpillar face so they can see those parts. And then stability and change. The change part's pretty easy for them to notice because of the metamorphosis that takes place. But what about it is stable? Something that's predictable, that it's going to have. Are they always going to leave to go to Mexico around the same time? They're going to come back around the same time. Probably takes around the same amount of time for it to develop and from the larva into the pupa stage and into the adult. So there's lots of ways that you can address these cross-cutting concepts just with this one children's book and one sort of nonfiction reader about that are teaching you the same thing or telling the same story.
Bernadette wrote, season cycles are stable.
Oh, right, seasons, exactly. Perfect. Oh, thank you. I see there's a lot in the chat and I can't see it while I'm presenting,
No
so thank you.
Deborah had also mentioned to your first question about cycles, the life cycle, going into full cycle. And then we have Milton writing in Florida, tested in 5th, but the 4th grade standard is compare and contrast the major stages in the life cycle of Florida plants and animals, such as those that undergo incomplete and complete metamorphosis
Yes.
and flowering and non-flowering seed-bearing plants.
Yeah, well, good. So I wanted to just give you a couple of other examples of how you could use paired text to teach science. And I picked some of the nonfiction readers, I picked them all from our EduSmart, and we have a book called Soils that we have with our 1st grade materials in Texas and 2nd grade materials in Florida. Our standards are not exactly the same. I mean, through K-5, we cover the same content in both states, but not always in the same year. And I like to pair talking about soil with a book called Diary of a Worm. It's about a worm who's like in elementary school and he has to take classes and he doesn't like to do his homework. It's just a really cute story. And the overarching theme by the end of the book is that worms help the earth because of what they do to the soil. And so you can pair that really cute story that, believe me, the kids will remember because part of it is pretty hilarious, and have them tie it back to some of the science behind soil. If you're not an EduSmart customer, then you know, I think you probably could find another nonfiction book to teach about soil. Probably not as good as ours, but there'll be one out there. And then another example has to do with weather, that we have different books for weather because they're different grade levels and sort of slightly different concepts taught. But we have a book at 1st grade in Texas and 2nd grade in Florida materials. And you can pair that with a fiction book about weather. And I like this. It's a whole series of weather books by someone who's a meteorologist meteorologist. And it's all about, his name is Freddie, and this is, I think, the first one, it's called Freddie the Frogcaster, but there's a whole series of books about weather with this frog that are super cute. And so this is a slide that probably has text that's too tiny for you to see, but what I wanted just to show you is I took the content standards for science for K1 and 2, and it's sort of a vertical alignment here. And then underneath it, I listed mainly fiction books, but some nonfiction books that you could use to teach that science content. So if you wanted to introduce it with a fiction book, you could choose one of these. And like I said, if you know one that's even better, please let me know and I'll add it to my list. And I didn't take a screenshot, but I have the same alignment document for Florida that I do for Texas. And I think rather than trying to separate attendees by state, Devonchi's just going to send out both of them to everyone so that you have access to those resources. And if you're interested in the topic and want to learn more, I'm certainly not the only person who has ever talked about paired text using fiction and nonfiction. Melissa Stewart writes a lot of science books that if you read a lot of science books to your kids, you probably recognize the name. And she's paired up with an ELA specialist to write a book called Perfect Pairs. I put a link in here that you could purchase it on Amazon. It's a little bit pricey. It's like $28 or $29. And so not just to, give you something that you would have to pay money to find. The Minds in Bloom website also has a section on how to engage students by pairing fiction and nonfiction text. It's not this one's not necessarily geared towards science where this book is, but if you wanted to read more about it after the webinar, I wanted to give you some place to get started to find out a little more. And so that's our session for today. I wanted to leave time for any kind of questions or comments. And just to let you know, contact me anytime, especially if you have a good book that you think I should add to the list. So my email is pretty easy to remember. It's just lisa@edusmart.com. So we also have plenty of other people here at EduSmart that are more than happy to answer questions about our product or future webinars or pretty much anything you would want to know, that we all are passionate about science education. So anyone have any questions?
Before I start reading all of the messages from our chat, Lisa, that you were not able to see because you were presenting, thank you so much for such a fun webinar. That was like,
good.
Everyone's clapping. You can't hear it, but everyone's clapping right now. Everyone's having this time. So for those of you who aren't able to look at the chat that was happening, Debbie Van mentioned she loved the worm book.
Good. It's great.
With an exclamation mark. Loved the book. And Lisa had mentioned about 2 vertical alignment documents, one for Florida and one for Texas. I have dropped them in our chat, but I will be emailing a recording of the webinar as well as slide deck and those 2 documents, and you should be getting those by Friday. So you will be getting those as well. We have a fun guest appearance. We found out that EduSmart readers are written by Milt Hewing, who's attending. Milt wrote most of these readers by himself. So thank you so much, Dr. Hewing,
including the one we read today. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And we have people thanking Milt. Debbie Van said, I believe that ReadWorks has paired text also, and they're all free. We have many people saying, thanks. My voice is muffled. Good to know. A lot of praise. Loved the idea. Great spiral. So yes. I know my voice is muffled and I don't know how to fix that just yet. Anyone have any questions? Please feel free to unmute. I think that would be the best way to go.
Yeah, I do want to say one thing. In my previous job where I did a lot of professional development, I would have repeat teachers come. So they would come to the training and then come back to the next one I did for the same grade level. And I had a kindergarten teacher tell me, my kids don't think that the butterfly turns back into an egg. I know that because I taught them how this works. They don't think that. And I said, well, I tell you what, why don't you ask them? Just ask them and see what they think. Just ask what happens. How does this butterfly go from the adult to the egg? What's happening here? And the next time she came back, she's like, oh my gosh, my kids thought the adult turned back into the egg. So don't think it's just me saying that. It's lots of research into student misconceptions, and of course, talking to a lot of teachers that teach early childhood. A lot of times you explain it so well, but you just don't think like a 5-year-old. And so you didn't think about, that misconception that they may have. So one of my favorite things to do PD on is misconceptions. So.
Do we have any questions for Lisa while we have her here? Again, if you're like me, you have all your questions as soon as you leave the webinar. So you have Lisa's email address, as well as we have Arlene and Jerry sharing information about EduSmart readers. If you want to follow up and learn more about them, we have more information on our screen right in front of you to contact them. Very well. So it looks like we are hitting time. Thank you again, Lisa, so much for presenting with us today. Thank you, everyone, for participating, for asking questions, commenting, really making this the webinar of the week. And we will see you all on May 19th for our next webinar.